Hello, hello, everybody. Hey, Tash. Thank you for being here. I will wait around just a moment or two before to let everyone in, and then we'll kick off. So, today we're going to be talking about the imposter syndrome and how to murder the imposter within, but like with a lot of love. Hi, Lee. Welcome, welcome. I see Aria, Margaret. While we're settling in, just letting you know the chat is open, so please leave your questions, comments, concerns in there. I and everyone else can see that. So it's a great way to have a discussion. Anything else? We'll be here for until 6:30, so it's nice and short. And yeah, let me know where you're tuning in from right now. I know, Tash, you're in Sydney. Where's everyone else from? Kerala. Hello. Hello, hello. And thank you for being here. Welcome, welcome, Kate. Margaret, Lee, Kate, where are you all tuning in from? Canberra, hello, welcome. Sydney. All right. Welcome, everyone. We will kick off now. People might keep rolling in as we go, but let's get started. We're going to talk about how to lead without feeling like an imposter. I'm going to make my slides nice and big. There's only a couple of them, really, for the most part. Just look at me. Alrighty, so we're gonna go through what the imposter syndrome is, what it manifests as, so what it looks like in people, so you can identify if you are feeling like a bit of an imposter, and then what to do with feeling like an imposter. Because the truth is that research shows that up to 70% of all people experience the imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. No one is feeling 100% self assured at every given point in life. So you are by no means alone. All right. So, what is the imposter syndrome? Now, very simply put, it is a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. The last part of that is very important, despite evident success, because you might feel inadequate because you don't have experience yet, or you don't feel confident in your skills yet because you're learning. That's one thing, right? And that's perfectly normal. But imposter syndrome generally refers to people who are very competent at what they're doing. They have evidence to prove that they are very competent at what they're doing. They are mostly fairly successful in their fields, or very successful for their age. When you're looking at this person from the outside, someone else seeing in will be like, yep, they're a leader in their field, they're successful. But that person themselves doesn't believe that. They feel like they have kind of stumbled into this situation out of luck, and they don't believe in their own ability to be there. So this is what it will look like. It ends up looking a lot like self-doubt, doubting your abilities, your skills, even though you are great at what you do. There is evidence that you're great at what you do, but you keep doubting your abilities to do it. Overachieving is actually a very common symptom because it is mostly overachievers who feel like I don't belong. They have either overachieved with what they consider is not an appropriate amount of effort. They were like, "Oh, that was way too easy." So yeah, that must be luck. I don't really deserve to be here. And someone's gonna find out that I'm a bit of a fraud. Like someone's gonna learn that, oh, it was just luck. I didn't work that hard to get here. So that's what it might look like. Or it might look like attributing success to external factors like luck, for example, or just being in the right place at the right time and not taking credit for your success. On the flip side, it also looks like attributing failure or mistakes to something lacking within yourself. So you see the difference? Like success is attributed to external factors, whereas mistakes, so you're not taking credit for your success. Whereas mistakes or failures is, yep, there's something wrong with me. There's something missing in me. And failure becomes this like really nasty monster that you're too afraid of. I mean, everyone has a fear of failure, but as we will look into this later, people with imposter syndrome are generally perfectionists. So failure is like worst case scenario for them. Like it's the absolute worst thing that could happen to you. Whereas it's not, right? We all know failure is not that, it's not that bad. Fear that you won't live up to expectations. And that's because people with imposter syndrome are feeling like they don't actually deserve to be where they are, right? They've kind of just accidentally stumbled onto this opportunity and through some streak of luck have had success. So they feel like they won't actually live up to these worldly expectations, the recognitions, etc., that might have been put on them, and they feel like they will be found out sooner or later. And it also looks like sabotaging your own success. So this is actually legitimately what I have been through over the last couple of years. So all of this is coming from like my personal experience. And sabotaging your own success is one of those things that you actually don't see for yourself, right? So I never would have said I self sabotage until somebody else pointed out to me that my perfectionism, for example, is a means of self sabotage because I set extremely high goals and then extremely high standards for achieving those goals. And anything else, anything other than those standards is failure. Um, and because it needs to be so perfect, I will then kind of not do some things or give up before I start on some things because that standard of perfection is a way to sabotage yourself, get in your own way. And everyone does it differently. So for some people, procrastination is a form of self-sabotage. Netflixing and chilling for all the time instead of getting that thing done, form of self-sabotage. So everyone has their own way of sabotaging your own success. Getting in your own way is, we're very good at that. Setting very challenging goals and feeling disappointed when you fall short, again, is also a way of self-sabotaging because if you're setting unrealistic goals, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure so that you can then tell yourself, look, see, I tried and I failed. I don't deserve to be here. I was right about myself. This is the self-talk that goes on in your head. Now, the reason I'm talking about this today is last week we talked about getting paid what you're worth, right? And next week we're going to talk about burnout, actually, which again is something perfectionists, workaholics, people with with imposter syndrome experience a lot. So, and in the middle is this piece about imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome actually gets in our way when we're asking people for what we're worth, right? We undersell ourselves, or we don't ask for any money at all. We'll do it for free or for exposure, which is what we discussed last week. Next week, we're going to talk about burnout. But again, same thing. Like if you don't address what is behind that burnout, the mindset, the beliefs that are driving you to burnout, like it's kind of pointless learning the practical tips to cure or prevent a burnout, right? You need to address the why behind it first. So one of the whys is this was my why. I burnt out real good by the end of 2019. I had to take about 3 months off, like just completely off. And then I slowly eased into work. So between November 2019 and January 2020, I actually took the whole time off of work because I was burnt to a crisp, right? I was completely useless to my business, to myself, to others in my life. And after that, I had to slowly ease back into work because it's burnout is not as simple as an overnight recovery, right? Like, oh, I'm burnt out, I'll get a good night's sleep today and I'll be back in action tomorrow. That's not how it is. And one of the things that was driving me to burnout point, like that I was not stopping to think about myself, care about myself, just working, was this imposter syndrome. Because 2019 was a huge year for me. I founded Money Girl and very quickly became successful. I mean, I'm not complaining, alhamdulillah, and was in the Australian Financial Review 100 Women of Influence list. And I felt like a freaking imposter. AFR 100 Women of Influence, me, a migrant girl, like first year of business. What? And then I worked and I worked and I worked trying to prove that, yes, I do belong there, even though it's already happened, but I didn't believe it in my own head. So I'm trying to prove, yeah, it wasn't luck. I wasn't just in the right place at the right time. No, I deserve this. Everyone else believes I deserve it. That's why I was on there, except me. Right. And that's why addressing this is so important. Knowing what it looks like and being able to identify it in yourself is so important, because otherwise you become a workaholic, work yourself to burnout. It has immense impact on your well-being. And imposter syndrome and generalized anxiety disorder are very closely linked, because imposter syndrome will give you anxiety because you have this negative self-talk and constant questioning of yourself happening in your head. How many of you relate to some of the things I'm saying? I would love to see. Let me know in the chat. Welcome, Priya. So many people from India. I love it. Okay, so to identify, do you have it? Think about some of the things that we were talking about earlier, the self-talk, the feeling like you're a fake, that you'll be found. But also here's some questions you can ask yourself. Do you agonize over even the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Have you ever been that person who spent 20 minutes writing a simple email because you didn't want to say one word out of place? Do you attribute your success to luck or outside factors? Or do you feel very comfortable owning up to it? Yes, I deserve this. I deserve to have this pedestal or this stage. Are you very sensitive to even constructive criticism? Because you might feel that your work or your output defines you. That is what makes you worthy as a human being. And so if someone criticizes your work, you feel like they're criticizing you as a person. Do you feel like you will inevitably be found out as a phony and people will learn actually you're not an expert in whatever you say you're an expert in? Do you downplay your own expertise, even in areas where you are genuinely more skilled than others? Type out some of your answers to these questions. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Reflect on some of these questions and say yes if any of these apply to you. Let me know in the chat. Yes. Totally. First and second last most often. Overthinking my mistakes. Yes. Rethinking emails so much. I've been there. I've been there. There was that was actually one of my moments of reckoning last year is I was sending a very simple email. It was just communicating plans, okay? What's the big deal? But I spent 20 minutes fussing over it. It was just communicating plans. All I had to do was say, firstly, this will happen. Secondly, this will happen. Thirdly, this will happen. But I spent 20 minutes just thinking, agonizing over, oh my God, does this sound a little bit aggressive? Or does it sound a little bit like I'm not excited? And I was like, girl, hold up. There is something in that mindset that I need to address. Okay, yes. So heaps of yeses in there. Yep, I figured as much. So, okay, now let's understand what this can manifest as. Yeah, so you might be able to relate to some of these. The perfectionist, this was me, hands down. The perfectionists are never satisfied and always feel like your work can be better. And rather than focusing on your strengths, you fixate on the tiniest flaws or mistakes. This often leads to a great amount of anxiety, pressure on yourself, and inevitably feeling like nothing is good enough. So for me, what that looked like was everything had to be 100%, even though 110% rather, even though 80% is good enough, but that was not good enough for me. Everything had to be perfect. So this year, 2020, legitimately, when it rolled over, I mean, who expected this is what 2020 would look like? But I distinctly remember saying to my sisters, this is the year of average for me. This year, I will be mediocre and I will be okay with it. I will be okay being good enough. I don't want to be perfect. That's what it looked like for me. My imposter syndrome manifested itself in me being a perfectionist. The superhero are the people who feel inadequate, but they feel compelled to push themselves to work as hard as possible. The expert is that person who is always learning because they never feel like they've learned enough to be an expert. So, I mean, learning is a good thing, right? And we're always learning. So, there's a distinction between that, like someone who's always learning because they want to grow, whatever, whatever. And then there's that person who is constantly upskilling because they never feel like what they know is enough. Yeah, the natural genius is the individual who sets excessively lofty goals for themselves and then feels crushed when they're not able to achieve it. And that's like we were saying, a form of self-sabotage as well, like incredibly unachievable goals by any standards. But that's what this person is doing. The soloist, that person who we know this person prefers to work alone, does not delegate, does not like to get others to do some of the work because everything it's almost related to perfectionism and that everything has to be done their way, like to the T. And self worth often stems from productivity. So when work is criticized, they feel criticized. When someone says no to their work or their offer, they feel like they have been rejected as a person. Um, yeah. So tell me some which one do you think you guys might be? I'm hands down the perfectionist. Like I was saying, that's me, and that's something I'm working on this year. What do you think you guys are? Which type of imposter do you feel? Priya, you're the perfectionist as well. What is the two things that you are unable to rationalize? Clarify that for me. A perfectionist combined with a procrastinator, that is actually a very common combination because perfectionists tend to procrastinate because uh, we've set this unrealistically high standard for our work and we would rather just sit and do nothing. Mix of superhero and the expert. Can a person be all of this? Yeah, 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 you can. The superhero. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna pause and do a little exercise here before we go into what do I do with this? Like, I know I feel this way. I know it's impacting my well-being. Now what, right? So we're gonna pause here for a moment and think about what core beliefs do I hold about myself right now? I just want you to take a moment to like be present with how you're feeling about yourself right now. What core beliefs do I hold about myself? Do I believe I am worthy of love as I am? Must I be perfect for others to approve of me? I'm going to pause for a minute and I'll let you all answer these questions for yourself. And I mean, you don't have to, but I would encourage you do before we move forward. And the second one is so incredibly important. I feel, do I believe I am worthy of love as I am? Or must you be perfect to be worthy of love? If you feel comfortable sharing, tell me your answer to the second question in the chat. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yep. So this was this year, this has been my realization as well, is what drove my perfectionism was my belief that I, as a person, was not worthy of love if my output in the world was not perfect. And so some of you who've been following me for a while might have seen that I have a little note now on my desk. I'll take a picture and share it with you all later. That says, every day it reminds me, you are worth more than your work. Because I needed to see that reminder every day. Because that is what I realized was driving my perfectionist tendencies, is I was thinking, I am only lovable based on what I am doing in the world, my productivity, my output, the quality and the quantity of that work. And so I have to constantly be pushing myself and proving myself and doing better than I did last time, because that's why people love me. And so that is not everyone's driver. That was my driver, right? And so answering this question led me then to heal, I suppose, from my imposter syndrome. So, in so these are some of the things, like, where this conversation doesn't end right now, right? But we will go into, we thought about how we're feeling, how to put names to those feelings. And now I want to talk a little bit about addressing it. This is how I went about it. Recognize imposter feelings when they emerge. So and give yourself like, be kind to yourself when that does happen. So the next time something happens, you are given like some public recognition, or you do well at work and you feel like a fraud, recognize that feeling in yourself, like, yep, I can feel that coming up. I'm kind of feeling like an imposter right now. And that's okay, because remember, 70% of all people will experience this at some point. It's okay that I feel this way. But just understanding and not trying to avoid that feeling will be the first step. The next step would be to talk about these feelings. And I found that very helpful. Particularly, research shows that women in professional spaces will experience this a lot more than their male counterparts. So I talk about this a lot with my girlfriends. And like I was sharing about the Financial Review Awards last year, there was 9 other young women alongside me in those awards. So I found it very useful to talk to them about how I was feeling. So we could, and because it gives you affirmation that you're not the only one, you are not alone. Rewrite your mental roots. And what I mean by that is question your thoughts. So remember how we were saying people who experience this are generally successful. There's plenty of evidence that they are experts in what they're doing. They just don't believe it themselves, right? So when these feelings come out, when these thoughts are coming up, question those thoughts, because what happens is over time, we've thought these things for so long. This self-talk has existed, this self-doubt in our head has existed for so long that it's kind of like a well-trodden path in our mind. So it's very natural to go down the same path again. So we got to break away from that path, form new paths, right? So when these feelings come up, if you are able to recognize it, talk about it, then you can start questioning yourself and going down new routes. Think about questions like, I am feeling this way. What real evidence is there to back up my assumption? Is there any real evidence against my assumption? Yeah. Visualize your success and then let go. So I found this very helpful in my own journey of being average, as I call it. Visualize the goal that you want to achieve, right? But then don't attach yourself and your self-worth to that goal. Let it go. If it happens, it happens. You will work towards it. But if it doesn't happen, so be it. And we're coming to that in the next 2 points. The next one is be good enough. So when you've set that goal, you've visualized your success, you might have imagined what the perfect scenario is, right? I want you to actually imagine what good enough will look like. Yeah. So, okay, when you're visualizing your success, Tamanna, great question. So, what does that look like? So, an example might be that I wanted, when I was starting my own business, I um, imagined and actually wrote this down because I like writing and drawing things. So I drew my vision out on 2 pieces of paper that are actually stuck in my bedroom. So every morning when I wake up, my vision for this year is in front of me. I love having these reminders around, but what it actually looked like was very tangibly. This is, so for example, Money Girl will have delivered X many courses this year. That's something that would look like what it would look like for me. Or I am going to visit home this year. I mean, a lot of that is out of my control, but it was very real visualization. What are you thinking in that moment? If you've set that goal, visualize what it feels like to have achieved it. What is around you? What does it look like when you've achieved it? How do you feel when you have achieved it? So visualize all of that, but then let it go. So do the goal setting part. It's important because that's going to be kind of like your North Star guiding you, right? But then don't attach your self-worth to having achieved that goal. Separate yourself from that goal. And that's what I mean by letting it go. With being good enough, I actually want you to picture, like, this is what perfection looks like, and then actually break down, what does imperfect but good enough look like? Yeah. And then here's the thing: if you're a perfectionist like me, I recommend you actually aim for good enough. Like, tell yourself, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to be good enough, which is what I'm practicing doing this year. And it's hard because you want to be perfect, but aim for good enough. Aim for that 80% mark. The next thing is reframe failure. So when you let go of those goals, the essentially what we're doing is creating a distance between our work or our output versus our self-worth, right? So that should it be a success or a failure, it does not define you as a person. You as a person are deserving and worthy of love and respect in the world, regardless of how you are doing on your goals or your work life, right? That's what it is. Reframe failure from, like, failure is the worst thing that can happen, to failure is a mistake that I've made. Cool. Now I can move on and make a different mistake, or move on and do the same thing right, whatever it is. Does that make sense? The next thing is, you have to be kind to yourself. You know how we were going through all that self-talk earlier? That self-talk, notice when it is happening in your head. And I love the way my niece framed it for me. My 7-year-old niece is quite wise. But no, I love the wisdom children bring into our life sometimes. She said the voice in our head is a nasty liar. And, sometimes that's true. um, Sometimes you just want to be able to identify that the voice in your head is lying to you, and instead be kind to yourself. Write down good affirmations that you want to tell yourself when you're in that vulnerable place, and say them out loud to yourself when you're feeling down. And the last thing is, seek support. Look, if it is really impacting your life the way it impacted mine, for example, like my feelings, I mean, it wasn't just feeling like an imposter, but amongst a couple of other things, it really drove me to burning out, right? And so I did seek help at that point because I didn't want to be in that place. I didn't want to be burnt out. And I also wanted to understand why I was driving myself to burnout so it didn't happen again, right? So do seek support, whether that is through a mentor, a coach. I went to a counselor. Whatever kind of support you feel comfortable with, there is support out there. So do seek it out. Um, I will go through questions. Don't worry. But just in case other people need to hop off, because it is 6:34, wanted to leave you with a couple of tools. I will upload this recording in the Facebook group. And I will link this infographic in there as well. Impostersyndrome.com is a very cool website. Which is actually run by this researcher, Valerie Young. Valerie Young has a long, long history in imposter syndrome research, and she has a book called The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women. It's for women because, like we were saying, research shows that women in the workplace experience imposter syndrome a lot more than men do. I'll leave that up while I go through. There was some great questions here. The last thing before everybody hops off is, can let me know in the chat if you can see a link below the webinar. know, okay, I will send a link in the chat. This is for, okay, no worries. I'm sending the link in the chat. It is a link to, some of you might know that next week, I am kicking off my personal branding course. Some of you already applied to that and are already in through your video applications. But some people were really, really reluctant to send in video applications, even though they really wanted to do it. So I am opening the course just for a little while, just for the next couple of hours. You can enroll into the course, which kicks off next week. It is my personal branding course, which will take you through a lot of this stuff. But it's more holistic. It takes you from identifying what you want to do, your values, all the way through to how to do it, setting goals, et cetera, et cetera. So that is kicking off next week. And because a few people were asking about it, I have open enrollments for tonight. It will close at midnight. The only reason it's for a limited time is because we kick off next week. So we want to be able to finalize numbers and send out calendar invites by tomorrow. It includes 8 weeks of training with me on all things personal branding. Let me know if you have any questions on that. But first of all, Mobina had a question. Where does the balance between humility and confidence lie? That is such a good question, Mobina, because I do not believe that they are both exclusive. So I think it's not so much of a balance as it like you. I think your humility and confidence have to go hand in hand, and so you can. I suppose you like the other side is you are overconfident, and I don't know what the opposite of humility is, but at least not in English. But yeah, I think they both have to go hand in hand. And the way I think about that is as more success comes your way, or whatever it is that gives you confidence, like when you've found your confidence, if you have made the distinction between what is your work and your output and your productivity and what is your self-worth, like I think that humility comes from that naturally, because you're not assigning that success to your self-worth as a person, much like you're not assigning that failure to your self-worth as a person. So it does go both way, that separation. The way that, at least that's the way I have processed it over the last year, is when I've separated failures or mistakes from my worth as a person. That has also separated my successes from my self-worth as a person, wherein my worth or my confidence is unshaken by either. I hope that makes sense. There's a few more questions. I'm constantly overthinking my words and actions. Yes. Oh, Mobina, thank you for those affirmations. I believe in myself. I love myself. I know I'm worthy of love, just as I am, with my strengths and faults. I love it. Um, we should put those up around our house and remind ourselves of that throughout the day. Mobina, you were mentioning a podcast that you listened to about fear and discomfort, how fear and discomfort is a good thing. We would love if you linked it to us in the Facebook group, if you can't link it to us right now. Tamanna, okay, the blue example. Yep, we already talked about that. Alice, how could rewriting your mental roots look like? did my example answer your question, like of questioning your thoughts? Not all of us move through life with specific goals planned out in depth. That is totally fine. You don't have to have, I'm going to go back to this slide because this is what most people are referring to. You don't have to have goals planned out in depth, right? But if you are the kind of person who has at least some vision of this is what success looks like, right? You might not have a step-by-step plan for achieving that goal, and that's fine. I mean, most of us don't, and that's okay. But if I don't know, the next we have milestones, right? If we don't have goals, we're assessing ourselves against something, right? And I suppose what I'm saying is that understand whatever it is that you are assessing yourself against, make it make it of intrinsic value, rather than saying if I achieve this, then I am worthy of love. Like if it's not a goal, it might be a milestone. For example, some people live by milestones like by 23 I should have graduated from this degree, by 28 I should be married, by 30 I should have children, by 34 I should have a house, or whatever, whatever extrinsic value we're measuring ourselves against. What I'm encouraging is distancing ourselves from those external factors, or at least our self-worth from those external factors, whatever they might look like. Okay, are there any other questions? Because it is time for all of us to say goodbye to each other, go and take care of ourselves. It is dinner time here in Sydney. Um, thank you so much to all of you for joining in. You will get an email soon with a replay as well if you want to go through it at a slower pace. And remember to join the Facebook group, which is called Nail Your Brand. I will post the replay there, and you can also post any unanswered questions or suggestions in there as well. You're taking the lessons back to your girlfriend's group. Yes. Yes. Share it with your friends. You can add them to the Facebook group as well, Priya, so they can watch the replay if they want. And that's it. I will see you all next week for a session on how to prevent burnout. And if you are looking for more one-on-one training with me, remember that the course enrollment is open for another couple of hours, and we kick off next week. All righty, that's it. Bye, everybody.